Mac here with you on Birds 365. Thanks for streaming in with us, Eagle fans. It is a I said Happy New Year to John. I got to say Happy New Year to Martin Frank. The NFL New Year starts today, and you do some celebrating even before you get to 12 o'clock midnight. And I'm here to celebrate Martin Frank. Where would the Eagles be if they had not retained Rick Lovato? I think things would have just come apart at the seam. You got to do your business while you do the business. Martin, in the last, however, 48, 56, however many hours since they started allowing teams to negotiate with players, what's the most impactful move the Philadelphia Eagles have made?
Got to be Rick Lovato. You just said it.
Yeah, right. Besides Rick Lovato, obviously,
Tongue in cheek,
I'd go with Saquon Barkley is the most impactful move that the Eagles made.
Hey, I'll say this real quick before I get to that, Martin. Our buddy Jimmy Kempsky points out that Rick Lovato has had more forced fumbles for the Eagles last season than N'Kobe Dean, Shaq Leonard, Zach Cunningham, Kevin Byard, Reed Blankenship, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Nolan Smith, James Bradbury, and Darius Slay combined. So don't disrespect the name of Rick Lovato. Actually, when you have a long snapper, when you don't have to worry about, that's a good thing. And Rick's made the Pro Bowl. So it is kind of a big deal that they're so secure at that position. But it only matters when you make a mistake. Saquon, yeah. Boy, I don't like it, Martin. I'm like the only one in town. I like the CJ move. I think they saw life with CJ Gardner-Johnson, saw life without CJ Gardner-Johnson. Yeah. And boy, they need a playmaker in the secondary, and he's a playmaker. Now, I'm concerned about injuries. He barely played last season in Detroit. He missed games while he was here. There's durability concerns. But, boy, he can make plays on the football when it's in the air, and they really, really need that on defense. I think he'll be a great fit for Vic Fangio. With Saquon, it's not that he's not a good player, but how much better, how much more production can you get than what the Eagles did from their running backs the past 2 seasons? Other than the passing game, the pass pro, that stuff's going to improve a little bit because Saquon's better. But how much of an improvement is it to go outside of your wheelhouse and say, all right, forget what we said the last 7 years. We're going to pay top of the line money for a running back.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, but I look at it like what you mentioned. Obviously, Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift both have career years, their last years in Philly, but look at what they've done when they weren't in Philly. So Sanders obviously went to Carolina this past year, got a big contract, did absolutely nothing, and was benched for most of the season. I think barely averaged 3 yards a carry. DeAndre Swift, before he came to Philly, he had a couple decent years, maybe 600 yards rushing, I think was his best before he got here. And then he has, over 1,000 yards and everything like that. So you look at Saquon Barkley then, he's been on some bad Giants teams with some awful offensive lines, and he still rushed for over 1,300 yards twice. He had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage his rookie year and everything, and even like in 22 I think he had like almost 1,700 yards from scrimmage. So he's proven he can run the ball, he can catch the ball, he's great in pass protection. You never have to take him off the field, and that was kind of like the problem with Sanders and Swift to some extent. I mean, Swift, as good as a receiver he was, is not nearly the kind of runner that Saquon Barkley is. And Sanders, as good as he was his last year in Philly, he also had the injury concerns also, and wasn't really relied on in the passing game. You had to bring in Kenny Gainwell, and you knew every time Gainwell was in the game what the Eagles were doing. And it's the same thing, with Swift last year. I mean, if you had Gainwell in there, you knew what the Eagles were doing. And Swift wasn't like a guy who would go up the middle and get you the tough yards. I mean, he had a good year and everything, but neither one of those guys is Saquon Barkley, and that makes the Eagles' offense even more dangerous than it has been the last 2 years. I mean, last year towards the end obviously got pretty stale and didn't go well and stuff. But, Barkley changes all that by himself. And that makes, and then you look at the impact it has on A, Jalen Hurts as a runner, and B, Hurts as a passer, throwing to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and now Devontae Parker, who are all going to have single
I
coverage.
haven't mentioned Devontae Parker, by the way. We should have mentioned that, Jody.
We should
Devontae
have.
Parker. Yeah.
Because 2 years ago I was absolutely stumping for Devontae Parker to come here. Little did I know Howie Roseman had a AJ Brown card coming out of his back pocket at the draft. So we'll get back to Devontae. But here's my question for you, Martin, because it sounds like you're very on board with the Saquon Barkley move, as am I. Love the player. But if you're going to pay him top of the market money, which the Eagles did, you need to have him click on all cylinders. And a big part of that is ability to make plays out of the backfield and turn it upfield, break tackles, break big plays. Jalen Hurts has not been very good at connecting with guys coming out of the backfield. He just haven't. Plain and simple. Check the NFL rankings, quarterbacks, throwing the guys out of the backfield. He hasn't been good at it. Now, could be him. Could be the two guys who've been called plays the last 2 years. I don't think it's Shane Steichen. It could very well have been Brian Johnson. It might have been the overall Sirianni offense of, we're not going to worry about throwing the ball downfield. Our offense runs through Devontae, through AJ, through Dallas Goedert. And if we ever get around to it, we might throw it to a back. If it's on Jalen and Jalen isn't either just good at it and or doesn't like doing it or disregards the guy in the offense and whatever read he is, are you not getting out of Saquon Barkley what you need to justify the kind of contract they've given him? Does that give you any pause?
No, it doesn't, because you've got spring practice, you've got training camp, and you got a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore. And I'm sure one of his directives is we got to make Saquon Barkley dangerous in the running game and the passing game. And, Kellen Moore has a track record of doing that. I mean, as much as he is a guy who loves to throw the ball, he also loves to throw the ball to the running back. I mean, you saw how dangerous Tony Pollard was in Dallas under Moore's system. And, obviously Austin Eckler with the Chargers has always been a good receiver out of the backfield. So
but he actually went backwards in that aspect this year,
pretty significantly, from 100 to 50s. Now he held out for a while, and there were some other issues.
Obviously,
yeah,
that got hurt.
But he really took it down.
Well, I mean, the point is he's got like a track record. Moore's got a track record of throwing the ball to the running back, and you won't find many better than Saquon Barkley.
I actually agree with that. But here's my point. And I agree with the skill set of Saquon Barkley. It's rare. It's not Christian McCaffrey, but it's up there. When I hear in March about getting players in space, I cringe. Unless your name is Kyle Shanahan, I cringe. Because everybody talks about it and nobody does it. And they say, oh, we got to get this guy involved. The Eagles were talking that way about DeAndre Swift, Nick Sirianni. He's a great receiver in Detroit. We're going to get him involved. How'd that work? I said, you know what? If they use DeAndre Swift on those bubble screens, maybe it'll work occasionally. Instead of using the receivers, you got a running back who can make the first guy. They never do it. DeAndre Swift on real wheel routes, they never do it. They always talk about it. And I think they will make a concerted effort to do it more because of Barkley's abilities. But they just never do it, Martin. I've been fooled too many times. They might script the first 15 plays and they might say, all right, we're going to do it 2 or 3 times. Then they get the guts of the game. They completely forget about it. And I just don't think it's going to be that relevant. Unless Kyle Shanahan's proven it with Christian and Devo, and he does it. Everybody else, they pay lip service, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would just look at the guy calling the plays this year. It's a big departure over a Sirianni system the last 3 years and everything. So, if we're gonna find out just how much sway Kellen Moore has in the offense, because, you know, if he's not using Barkley the way he should be using him, he should be sued for malpractice, in my opinion. I mean,
oh, there's a lot of expectations, and Martin is increasing the expectation. That's another part of it. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas guy. You got to keep everybody happy. Now you got to keep Saquon Barkley happy. And then the other aspect I'll bring up with you, Martin, is the touches. 1,500 touches. You talked about his rookie season. He tore his ACL since then. He's had other significant injuries.
Right.
If you give me, and I've told this to Jody, if you give me the 2018 Saquon Barkley, I'm all on board. I haven't seen the 2018 Saquon Barkley since 2018. No concerns there?
Well, there was the 2022 Saquon Barkley, still at 1,300 yards rushing, another 300 or 400 yards receiving. I mean, you know, he's still good. I mean, you know, you won't find too many running backs who can do what he does. So I don't have too many concerns. I think Barkley's signing is a home run. I'm actually stunned by it, not in the fact that they were interested in him, but like once DeAndre Swift's market was set at like
12, yeah, I thought, when DeAndre signed for that, I'm like, oof.
Yeah, 12:02 on Monday afternoon, you know, with the DeAndre Swift 3 years, $24 million. I'm like, oh, well, I guess Saquon Barkley's out of their range, but sure enough, they got him.
All right, if that's not the biggest one, and we'll put CJGJ to the side, let's fire in the middle here. If I tell you Bryce Huff equals Jason Babin, your thoughts, Martin Frank?
Oh man, I don't know. I think Bryce Huff more equals Hassan Reddick, and
whoa, save that, Xander. Clip that tape right there. Martin Frank said Bryce Huff's going to be Hassan Reddick. Okay, we'll see.
I was going to say, if you look at their career trajectories, I mean, Reddick's first 3 or 4 years wasn't really much until I think it was year 4 when he finally had his first 10-sack season. You know, and Huff's the same way. I mean, except for Huff obviously was an undrafted guy, worked his way up through the Jets pecking order, I guess, and you know, had a breakout year with 10 sacks. He's young still, you know, rushes the passer, kind of the same type of build as Reddick and everything. So I think, you know, I think that's the Eagles' idea, is they're getting younger. They're getting a player who could have the same kind of production that Reddick had. And, you know, obviously they're making that clear by, you know, entertaining trade offers for both him and Josh Sweat. So, I mean, it's clear to me anyway that they look at Huff as a younger version of Reddick.
Yeah, I mean, Jody and I are kind of 180 shockingly on this. He's and so are you, are big on Barkley. I'm like, the Huff signing, that's the one that's got to work. They need this guy to be a big time pass rusher. Because, you know, they're trying to sort of get a little bit, he's trying to thread this needle, trying to get younger, as you mentioned, Martin, a little bit less expensive, have him for a longer shelf life.
Less expensive. Time out Philadelphia. He's making more money than either Josh.
No, but but I'm not talking the projection of where Josh and Hassan are going to be with extensions. It far surpasses 17 million. So I'm not talking about the snapshot today. I'm talking about a 3-4 year shelf life, which they're hoping to get out of Bryce Huff. You never think about more than 3 years now in the NFL, but if you can extend that shelf life at 17 million, again, in the third year, guess what? Bryce Huff will probably be complaining because he'll be underpaid if he hits, and he'll be saying, hey, what about me? I need more money. That's kind of how it works. So Hassan Reddick's going to get a lot of money. It's just a matter of how much. And it looks like Josh Sweat is on the move. They might move both of them. What would you do on the pass rush? They also want Nolan Smith involved. What put your Vic Fangio hat on, Martin. What do you want on the edges?
Yeah, I still think they could draft someone in the first or second round too. I mean, you know, I don't think they're done at edge rusher, especially. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if both Reddick and Swift Sweat were gone. I just think the Eagles don't want to pay those guys their next contracts. You mentioned, what they would be worth on the next deal. I mean, Reddick wants to be paid like, in the $20 to $25 million range average value per year.
I'll give you a guy. Danielle Hunter signed yesterday. 2 years, $49 million. I think Hassan Reddick and Danielle Hunter checked their career stats, last 2 years stats. Hunter had a better year last year than Reddick, but Reddick had a better year the year before. Average to 2. That's about his range. Yeah. If you're not ready to pay him $25 million, you got to move on.
Yeah, and why would the Eagles want to do that with a guy who's turning 30 in September? So
Danielle Hunter's a year older than that, so the Texans decided they could pay him $24.5 million.
He only signed for 2 years. You probably have to give Reddick at least a 2-year extension, which wouldn't start till 25. So you're paying him you're putting him down on the cap for at least $20 million, into his mid 30s. I mean, that's a lot of money for a guy who might start declining. I mean, you don't know. I mean, maybe he goes somewhere else and has 15 sack seasons for the next 3 years and you got egg on your face. But I mean, the chances of that aren't as great. And the thing with Sweat, that kind of surprises me a little bit too. But, he's also his current deal is like a 13 million average value. His next contract is probably going to be the same range as what Huff signed for, like the 17 to $20 million a year. Plus, they're about the same age, but Sweat had that catastrophic knee injury, and you never know how much longer that's going to hold up. So, it makes sense to take a chance. You have a better chance of hitting on a guy like Huff, who's younger, healthier, with that kind of money than you do with both Sweat and Reddick. And I mean, if both those guys are gone, the Eagles need to get another one, obviously in the draft. But even if they don't, they probably should get. I mean, I think at least one of them is not coming back, and maybe both. And, you could always get another one in the draft. I mean, the Eagles will know by then what they need and everything like that. So I think they have options. I mean, I think obviously they're counting on Nolan Smith taking a big leap, and I think that might be the key to all of this working too, because if he has another year like he did his rookie year, the Eagles are going to be in trouble. They're going to have to do something. But yeah, I mean, I think the Huff signing is a good one. I think it definitely might mean the end for either Sweat or Reddick, and maybe both.
Yeah, Devontae Parker. Much less splashy. The Eagles got him essentially for the veteran minimum, and New England's going to pay him the rest of his scheduled $4 or $5 million, whatever it was, with offset issues. So worthy of a dice roll, veteran player. A lot of criticisms I've heard. I didn't pay attention to Devontae Carter yet. A lot of trouble gaining separation, according to fans up there. So it's hard to imagine he can't be better than what the Eagles rolled out there as the third receiver last year, though. Any excitement over Devontae Parker?
Well, should we have a moment of silence now for Quez Watkins? Or
Quez surprisingly hasn't signed in the first 2 days.
Surprisingly, huh, John? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I
thought he'd be the first wide receiver off the board. No, go ahead.
I think for $1.2 million, I think it's a great risk. I mean, you look at a guy like that who has the track record that he does. I mean, he's been in the league for 10 years. I mean, he's a little bit older, but he's not. I don't think he's finished by any stretch of the imagination. And some of the issues in New England, I mean, you look at their offense. I mean, look who was throwing him the ball and everything, and they didn't really have much. And
what happened to Mac Jones, man? That rookie year, he looked like pretty good, and man, I don't know what happened there. Yeah. But yeah, I hear a lot of this context. I hear it with Saquon. Now I'm hearing it with you. I mean, Devontae was a big time player for a while in Miami. I blaming the supporting cast. The Eagles obviously have a tremendous supporting cast on paper offensively. Maybe that can elevate these players. But don't great players overcome that? truly good. And I'm not talking about Devontae. I mean, he's aging.
I don't know that he was ever a truly great
but
player at any
no.
point in his career.
But if you are really good, don't you overcome that, or is that legitimate? At least to a point. Like I heard the same thing with Sam Darnold. Oh, he never had a good. Now I'll have a good supporting cast.
Yeah, I mean, you're not bringing him in to like replace AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. You're bringing him in to be the third receiver. You know, maybe get the 8 or 10 yard pass. Keep the sticks moving, stuff like that. I mean, you're not looking at him.
But he's also like 6'3", 215. Like, where's he playing? Yeah. He's not a slot receiver.
Why not? I mean, why can't he be? Right? Like there's so many different ways to use the third wide receiver. I mean, with Quez, his thing was speed. So, you open up the field for AJ and Devontae Smith. But I mean,
Cody's favorite.
Theoretically,
yeah.
Theoretically. But like you look at Devontae Parker, you could have a third receiver who's a big, tall guy who can catch the ball in traffic.
Does that mean more Devontae Smith in the slot? I would like that.
I think like there are any kind of like so many different kind of options you can do. Everything.
You have a Devontae and a Devontae.
Yeah,
differently.
I'm going to ask you to do this, Martin, because I'm not going to ask John. Will you ask Nick Sirianni? How are you going to survive without Quez Watkins taking the top off the defense this year? Because, man, did he go to the well with that one. Don't worry about Quez's cut. Quez makes Devontae Smith better. Quez makes A.J. Brown better. And their wide receivers go out and sign a slow veteran who's an outside wide receiver, not a slot guy? Really? I guess they flushed the whole, well, you got to have speed for the other wide receiver to make it easier on AJ and Devontae. That idea's gone right out the window, and that was Sirianni's idea. So please, at some point, will you ask him, hey, coach, when did you give up on your third wide receiver has to be a speed guy so you can make life easier for
Well,
AJ
I think
Brown?
that I'll jump in. I think the contract says don't put Devontae Parker's name in pen on the Eagles roster.
I'll put it in over Quez Watkins. I'll take any of either of you two guys' actions. Devontae Parker will have more catches, more yards than Quez Watkins in an Eagle uniform.
Oh, yeah. Quez isn't going to be on the Eagles, but they're going to draft a receiver. They're going to bring somebody. By no means is he guaranteed to make this roster. And to be honest, I would be stunned if Devontae Parker ends up being the Eagles' third receiver. I think they want to upgrade more significantly, especially Kellen Moore's history. He's an 11 personnel guy, so he's going to have 3 receivers on the field. I think
which of their first 3 picks are they going to be using for a wide receiver, John? Because otherwise they're drafting one in day 3 and they're hoping for another Quez Watkins, which didn't really quite pan out over the course of Quez's career.
See what they do in free agency. There's still
that
more
speed wide receiver left out there, John.
There's always speed wide receivers. There's always guys who can run. The problem is, can they catch? There's always guys. You can find that they'll bring in rookie tryout guys who can run.
Well, they had Devon Allen both the last 2 years. How much of a shot they give him?
Well, that's the exact point, making my point. Running isn't the issue. You can find a bunch of guys who can run. The fact is, can you run routes? Can you catch the football? Can you do it consistently? Can you track the football? A lot of things. But my only point is Devontae Parker is not the third receiver on this team by de facto creed, because they signed him to a $1.2 million contract. I mean, they'll still look to upgrade. And that brings me to the other kind of small moves they've made. Matt Hennessy, they signed a linebacker. I keep forgetting his name. Baum from New England.
Yeah.
Zach Baum, thank you. Any of those? I think Hennessy makes sense. Now, he's had some injuries, but to be a backup for Cam Jurgens, backup on the interior, he's got some starting experience at least a couple of years ago. I think that's a solid signing. And Zach Baum, do you think that's about special teams, Martin, or will they give him an opportunity to compete to be one of those off-ball linebackers?
I think it's more a special teams type of signing. I mean, I think he only has like maybe not even a dozen starts in his career. I think he's more of a special teams guy. I mean, maybe possibly spot starting here and there, depending on injuries and all that. But I would think that their second starting linebacker still is not on the roster. And I actually like the Hennessy signing because you can do like so many different things with him. I mean, let's say, for example, you want to keep Cam Jurgens at right guard because, you think that's ultimately his best position. Well, you could put Hennessy in at center. I mean, that he started every game for the Falcons there in, I think, 2021, and then he got hurt, obviously. But, so you could do that, or you put Jurgens, obviously, at center. You have Hennessy to compete for the starting right guard job with Tyler Steen. I mean, if the Eagles aren't sold on Tyler Steen as the starting right guard, then, Hennessy's a guy who can start there.
By the way, Martin, let me interrupt real quick because I'm dealing with Groats and Kratz, as you know, so much. And Bob was at the forefront. Oh, maybe they'll move Landon Dickerson to center.
Right.
And Lando, Landon doesn't say a lot. And he got asked the question yesterday, oh, are you going to stay at left guard? And he said, that's not up to me. That's what he always says. It's Stoutland's decision. But he's not moving. Why are so many people thinking Landon Dickerson is moving? Please tell me you're not in that camp.
I am not. In fact, I was just going to get to that, while I was going on this rant of mine. Like another option would have been to move Landon Dickerson from left guard to center. But why would you do that? I mean, the guy's been a Pro Bowl left guard for 2 years. I mean, leave the guy where he is. He's obviously the best guy in the NFL, one of the best guards in the NFL. You just signed him to an $84 million contract. It's not to move him to center. It's to keep him at left guard. So I don't see that as an option at all. I'm in the anti-growth.
All right. Yes, I got one.
Yeah, that would be roster building malpractice. Let's make the guy the highest paid guard in the NFL. Oh, and then move him to center. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I know he played center in Alabama, and he was a darn good one, and the Eagles drafted him there as an eventual replacement of Jason Kelsey. But, he's a natural left guard. He's a Pro Bowl player. Why would you change that?
Roach is like a dog with a bone. And then he heard Landon say, well, I don't know. Landon always says that. Always. It's like, that's not up to me.
He went to the Nick Saban school of not giving the media much. In fact, he actually about that. So, that's kind of his way of saying, I'm staying at left guard. They're giving me $84 million. I'm a left guard.
Now, Martin, you've been pretty optimistic today, pretty positive, more than glass half full. You're 3/4 with all these Eagle moves. I'm going to give you one where I'm sorry. You just can't possibly be positive. The Eagles lost Marcus Mariota to the Commanders yesterday. Mm-hmm. Need for a new backup quarterback here in town because Marcus Mariota is not going to be around to kick around anymore. Where the Eagles going for backup quarterback? Is it going to be Tanner McKee elevated to that position? He was okay in preseason last year, but if he's your backup quarterback and Jalen Hurts collapses an ankle in week 2, your season is over and done with. Are the Eagles going to get a veteran backup quarterback this offseason?
I don't see them spending Mariota type of money for a backup quarterback. So I'll answer your question by saying I think they could go in the draft for a quarterback. And I wrote this like maybe a month ago and got killed for it, but they have 2 second-round picks. If there's a guy like Michael Penix or Bo Nix still available, why wouldn't you take a chance on that? You only have to pay him like $1.5 million, and you can develop the guy behind Jalen Hurts. And, if something really bad happens to Hurts, if he has like a Carson Wentz type of career collapse in the next few years, well, you've got
bring that up
on the roster. But at the very least, you have a guy who's young, who's inexpensive, and who's good, that can be the backup. And if, let's say Hurts lives up to the contract, maybe you flip him in a few years for a second or first round pick. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route. I mean, they're obviously spending a lot of money elsewhere, like at running back and safety and defensive end, so I can't see them shelling out like $5 to $10 million on a backup quarterback. So why not look for one in the draft? I mean,
Shoot,
I'm not.
they just did it with Jalen Hurts. It'd be Jalen Hurts part 2. People lost their mind when they used the second-round pick on Jalen Hurts because they had Carson Wentz.
So 1 second-round pick that year. They have 2 second-round picks this year, and they addressed a lot of their needs in free agency. So you're not looking necessarily to draft a certain position. I mean, obviously they still haven't done anything at cornerback, and they probably do need another defensive end. But you could roll the dice somewhere with that. You've got that extra second-round pick, or you could even use it in the 3rd round. I mean, maybe a guy like Spencer Rattler is available there, but what I'm saying is basically like they could find a backup quarterback in the draft unless they're sold on McKee. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we never saw him practice after the preseason game, so we don't know if he like really took off and was like throwing darts down the field like every practice, but I don't know about that. So yeah, I think there are options at backup quarterback. Maybe you get a veteran cheap, like 1.5 million.
They wanted Andy Dalton last year. Is Andy still out there? I think he is.
Probably.
Yeah. So they tend to like the veteran route. By the way, Marcus Mariota, I had to look it up, played 46 snaps last year.
Yeah.
He got $1 million raise. We'll see what the real contract is. So well done, Marcus Mariota, to get an extra $1 million with those 46 snaps. How about this one? And Frank NFL. Make sure you follow Martin on X. Read him. DelawareOnline.com. Justin Fields. The NFL seems to have spoken on Justin Fields, and nobody wants to offer anything for this poor guy. And he's got a lot of talent. I think Chicago ruined him with bad coaching. Why not send a couple day 3 picks and let Justin Fields back up Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to anything at this point. I mean, Howie's had a history of doing like creative, out of the box type of moves. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all either. I mean, I can't. Justin Fields would be as a backup, but then again, if you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. The Bears could also keep him. I mean, they have nothing to lose by trading him right now, just dumping him for nothing. I mean, even if they draft a quarterback, you have a guy. If Caleb Williams or whoever isn't ready to start day 1, you still have Fields. And
boy, I don't know if I want that situation around my young quarterback. Although that's a
bad
order.
Yeah, but Johnny Mac, if the Eagles traded for Justin Fields and Hurts has back-to-back bad games, you don't think you're going to get the same hue and cry from here in Philadelphia? Oh, get Justin in there. So what? They still got wherever Fields goes. If he's a backup, it's going to be issues. If you're penciling him in as a backup, doesn't matter Chicago, Philadelphia, or anywhere else, you're going to have the quarterback looking over his shoulder all year long.
I don't know. You and I liked him coming out, Jody.
I still like him.
Well, so do I, talent-wise. I like him talent-wise, but I don't think anyone around the NFL, like in Chicago, it's a deal because they took him in the 1st round. If he moves on to somewhere else, then he's just another failed 1st-round pick in a city. I don't think there'd be a hue and cry if
I do
backing up Jalen Hurts. I other than the typical backup. I mean, the old adage that the backup is the most popular player on the team when your starter is struggling. I mean, that happens no matter where you are. And the assumption is Jalen Hurts is not going to fall apart.
Right. But Jalen Hurts went backwards this year. I think we can all agree on this. He was not as good as he was the year before. Did the cry for Marcus Mariota ever come? No. And it shouldn't have. It could with Justin Fields. If they brought in
he's got Saquon Barkley. There's no cry. He's got the greatest supporting cast in the history of football.
Yeah, that's the thing. If Jalen Hurts regresses with Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, I mean, what do you got there? But,
yeah.
All right, just remember, Jody Mack said it here. What's today's date? The 14th or whatever it is. The Eagles' backup quarterback should be Mason Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph,
who played well for the Steelers at the end of last year, got him into the playoffs with that late win, didn't play badly in the playoff game either, and they went out and decided to go with Russell Wilson. Mason Rudolph, solid backup quarterback, and you don't have to use a second-round draft pick to give yourself a cheap backup quarterback. Now, I don't know what Mason's going to get paid. Some of these quarterback contracts have surprised me. The fact that he didn't go in the first wave of quarterback signing. What kind of money do you think Mason Rudolph gets on the open market as a free agent who's been basically a bench warmer and just signed at the tail end leading into free agency? What do you think he'd get, Mark?
Well, if you're looking from an Eagles perspective, I don't think they'd be willing to go much above $2 million for any kind of veteran backup quarterback. Ooh. And that not be,
even though they went 5 for Mariota last year. You think they're going to cut it back to 2 with an expanded cap, huh?
See, that's what I'm saying. I think they will. I don't think they're going to spend big on a backup quarterback. I think they either look at it and say, okay, we got Tanner McKee, he could be the backup, or we'll get somebody cheap in the draft and let him compete and see how it plays out. I mean, if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, for an extended period of time, there's no backup quarterback who to the Super Bowl. There's no Nick Foles out there. And it doesn't even matter because, there's such a big drop off. Like, who's Patrick Mahomes' backup? You know what I'm saying? Like, if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, the Chiefs aren't winning the Super Bowl. If Jalen Hurts gets hurt, the Eagles aren't winning the Super Bowl. That's that type of thing. So, they spent their money elsewhere. I mean, look at what they've done so far. They're not spending big money on a backup quarterback.
Yeah, that's fair. But the Eagles have shown the history of wanting to do it. I mean, they want somebody that if they need to win a couple games, that they can win you those games. I think you're right. If you lose your starter for, in week 2, you're done. If you lose Patrick Mahomes, what Chad Henne had, remember the great drive Chad Henne had when Patrick is like, that's what you want. You want somebody who can just pick you up in a certain situation to get you over the top. But yeah, if you lose a star quarterback for 16 weeks, you're screwed.
Gardner Minshew was making $2 million, I think.
That was a trade. Maybe they trade for a younger quarterback. Howie does that. He might do that at linebacker. Don't forget the trade market with Howie Roseman, because he will.
Great point.
That's how they brought CJ in the first time, a trade. Final year on his rookie deal. But anyway, yeah.
Got to be able to find those guys. That's a good sentiment, but then the deal's got to be there to be made, which is not always as easy as we think it's going to be. It is always easy talking to Martin Frank, though. MF, thank you very much for hopping on with us today. Martin Frank is giddy. I'd have to describe him if I had to.
He is excited about the move.
Giddy about the Eagles' moves this
Happy new league year, Martin Frank. Yeah, Happy New Year.
It's going to be interesting. They did a lot, and probably still more to come, knowing Howie.
We shall see. Martin, thanks, bud. That's Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal, here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. Come back. I want to explore the third wide receiver a little bit more with John, and we'll set up for Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News, going to jump in and not only talk about Saquon Barkley, which is going to be the main topic of conversation, but the division rival New York Giants, what they've done. They can't even begin to match the Eagles because Martin Frank basically stamped their ticket to the Super Bowl, didn't he? Man, he was upbeat about the Eagles. I'm upbeat too, but not
positive.
As upbeat
as need a little positive. Martin. I get criticized for being negative. I get criticized for being positive. I get what can I do? I can just tell you what I think of each move. That's what I do.
Exactly.
Some I like.
The way it should do it. That's why you're good at what you do. You take a move by move, and some are good and some are bad.
Yeah.
Or except if you're Martin Frank, then they're all good. Martin pretty good today. Yeah. The two Delaware guys are the best. Martin is Mr. Optimism and Groats is Mr. Pessimism. They balance each other tremendously, as a matter of fact, when we get them on. All right. McMullen McDonald coming back. We will put hour number 2 underway in just a second. Hey, Birds fans, I got a deal for you. Here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now from one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of their 2 managing general partners, either Jim or Fran, and tell them you're a friend of JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
My name is Fran Salerno, and I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.